Welcome to Color Me Happy podcast. My name is Brandy Hofer, your host. Thank you so much for being here. I sure do appreciate your time. I am really excited about this guest, Heather Klages. And I really loved how she told her whole story in broadcasting, and I loved getting to know her better on a different level because, gosh, I see her out in the community like anywhere. It's like the mayor and Heather and Kurt Price. It's like you're guaranteed to see them if you're at any public function at all. And it just says something about what the community means to them. And Heather, I loved hearing just how gracious she is for the life that she has found herself in. And I think we can all take a really big look at our lives from hearing Heather's perspective. So you'll really enjoy this episode. I want to talk about some upcoming items for us at Color Me Happy Community and brandyhofer.ca. We are relaunching a new site because so much has changed. I went from being like an artist to just like selling art to like sharing everything I knew about art in like an education way, writing a book and connecting with people on a really deep level, starting a podcast, and I can't believe so many people listen to it, and going out and I actually talked about this with Allie Stone. She's a motivational speaker today on the podcast, which we'll be releasing who knows when in the future. And she's like, when you don't just go and start a business, because she coaches people, like a lot of huge business people, and she's like, I do not advise them to be like, oh, I want to open up a clothing chain and it'll just like be the best and we'll just make a whole bunch of money. She's like, it will just fall short if you don't have a strong why. If your why doesn't have foresight, and now I'm just making up things myself, but so from my words, I guess, in my perspective, if your why isn't strong, if you're not feeling it in your gut, if you're not intuitively moving through why you're doing something, it will not succeed, because our culture and material things are becoming less valuable. And I always talk about time being our most precious commodity, and we're really, I think, with what we've all gone through, is rethinking how we move about our daily lives and where that time and energy is focused and going. And it's no longer on accumulating more material things. I mean, when we have our essential needs met, like, what are you doing with your time, energy, and money, right? Like, why are you doing this? So I think that's, and I'm also listening to Happy Money, and it's just this, it's a really powerful book. I advise anyone to check it out. It's got some really great concepts, life concepts and general concepts about, well, I wrote a book about it too. See Your Everyday Ordinary is Extraordinary. And I just hope that for so many people, like, where are you sitting all day? Or where are you moving all day? Where is your energy going? What are you giving, and what are you receiving in return for that exchange? And so I think when we're more conscious of our why, you have more ability to be gracious, like Heather, our guest today. Love what you're doing, love your life, and then you just, when there's passion behind it and love, you just don't want to stop doing it, right? So check out our book, Color Me Happy, See Your Everyday Ordinary. Oh, there's my timer. The sprinkler's got to go off. Watering my garden. One of my things I love is my secret love for landscaping. I'll just be like, that whole tree needs to be dug out and moved over here. I think it would be better. So I love yard work. I'm cleaning out my whole dad's yard for him for fun, because I just love how it feels. But sometimes I just have extra energy and need to focus it on things. So it's an outlet. Never would I want to be in the landscaping business. Well, maybe. Who knows, right? Who knows? Anyway, check out our book, Color Me Happy, See Your Everyday Ordinary as Extraordinary, for summer reading. And it's one of those books that you'll probably... Oh, now someone's knocking at my door. Frick. Life, right? So good, but so busy. It's one of those books you'll want to, doggy ear and write in and underline and make notes. So pick that up and stay tuned in the Color Me Happy community. It's free to join if you haven't joined already. We are going to be launching our sketchbook project, our new brandyhofer.ca, and I'm going to be doing a big scale on my launch. So stay tuned for that. I gotta go get the door. And the first 26 minutes, it was like, I noticed, and I was like, because we went back out and in, there was of course, technical difficulties. And then I looked over and I was like, oh my gosh, we're not recording.
Oh no.
And so we caught it all on camera though. It was great.
That's
also,
awesome.
Though, one of my meet recordings disappeared, which sucks too. But because it was a 2.5 hour meeting for the first time conversation. And those are magical, I feel. And I was with Janelle, Sherwick. She has a viral account for DIY, and she's from Kids Scotty, which is pretty cool. So I wanted to hear the whole thing, how that happened. And she recently just turned over her, she quit her full-time job to just do DIY on TikTok and Instagram. It's pretty cool.
That's pretty
cool
awesome.
Story. Yeah. Okay. Welcome, Heather Klages. I'm so happy that you're here. And I'm very excited because I don't know your story. And I don't know how many of your listeners know your whole story either, because how much do you go into that on the radio? Probably you just stick to the script.
On the radio, you tend to... there are certain things you share and certain things you don't. And it kind of depends on the day and on your mood and what's going on in the community. Because you always think about, what is my listener doing and what are they going to connect with when I talk about it? So a lot of times those are kind of the filters,
you always think about that? That's such a hard... that always crosses your mind?
I try to. I don't know that I always do, but I try to think what's my listener doing right now? Are they going to connect with this? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's always kind of that filter in your head of, is this going to... Sometimes too, it's is this going to make sense to them? Am I wording this right?
Right. I feel that's always an imposter syndrome thing. You're did that make sense? Certainly I tried. My filters are different than yours. I'm don't F up or swear too much. So,
and for me, it's don't swear at all. That's bad on the radio.
Right. Public radio. Well, I don't know. I don't know all the rules, but I think I've accidentally maybe pushed those boundaries a few times. Okay, so we were just talking about before we started recording, and I hate that. I always miss something when you don't press record right away. So we were talking about equipment and how even if we knew the equipment, it would be different from when you went to school. So you said, when was that? How long ago was that?
So I graduated from university in 2005. So I would have started in 2001. And when I went to university, I took journalism. It was Ryerson University. They've renamed it, though. Now it's Toronto Metro University, I think. But anyways, that's the course I took. And when you were there, because it was journalism, you took newspaper, online, radio, and TV.
Super useful.
No. I know, eh? And online, it's funny to think about it now because it was so... Compared to nowadays, it was so basic, right?
They just called it online?
Yes, online journalism. It was writing for
online
the web.
Journalism. No, that makes sense. Yeah.
So you did all these things, but for example, when we did our TV section, we still had to use the VHS tapes and put them in the camera. And that's how we
Oh, yeah.
edited too with VHS. And even for radio, you'd have your little cassette tape and you'd go, you do your interview and you'd come back and you'd edit it. And I think in my last year, they started to bring in digital. And so in the last year, you kind of got a taste of that. But even when I got my first job, like we were
You were
still
not
recording
prepared.
onto tapes. Yeah, well, we were still recording onto tapes, so I kind of
Oh,
was
you
prepared
were. Okay.
for like a couple years, but then it all went digital to MP3s and WAV files and things like that. So it's really changed. So I feel like, hey, I know how to press play on a cassette tape,
Yeah.
and I still have a cassette tape player at my home just in case.
Just in case. Yeah. I found one of those old Fisher Price ones at the olive tree. And I was like, yes, this is such a score.
Well, remember when there were Walkmans and like Discmen? Like the amount of batteries I went through listening to music must have been just awful when I was a kid.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So let's talk about your childhood. Like, is this something that you always like leaned in toward, or did you know, or you were just like, I'll try this?
When I was a kid, I just remember always thinking to myself, like, I just want to be on the radio. Like, I didn't know what form that would be, but I kind of always had it in my head. And I'm not really sure why. I think part of it, though, is because, you're getting ready for school. And I grew up on a farm. So the radio would always be on in the morning because you want the weather or whatever information. Or as you get older as a kid and you don't like going to school anymore, you're like, please cancel the buses. Please cancel the buses. So we listened to the radio quite a bit. And I know that was part of it because it was kind of a constant in my life. And I think too that part of it was because I loved music so much. And I'm like, well, gee, if you're on the radio, you listen to music all day and you talk every now and then. Like, this sounds like a sweet job. So that's what I thought when I was a kid. And I kind of, like, there was a time where I was like, well, I don't know if this is the right career path. Like, maybe I should become a teacher, like a music teacher, because I like music. And I wasn't really sure. And I think it was somewhere in high school where somebody kind of said to me, like, what about journalism? What if you tried this course? Take a look at it. What do you think? And then it kind of just went from there.
Yeah, so it was kind of like, obviously looking back, like it seems like a more direct path, but it was just like an accumulation of so many different things. Where did you grow up?
I grew up on a farm just outside of Owen Sound, Ontario. And so I have two brothers, one's older, one's younger. So I'm the middle and I was the only girl in our family. So it's really fun growing up on the farm. Like, it's a lot of work, but it also was a lot of fun. And I learned a lot of things that I might not have learned growing up somewhere else. So, and my dad comes from a larger family, so there always seemed to be an uncle or an aunt around. So it was nice to have family so close by.
I think it is a nice thing to grow up in a rural setting as well, if you have like a lot of community in that rural setting. But I just think like young people don't have that same opportunity to just like discover themselves, like, and room and space for like being bored. And
Yep.
I feel like on a farm you'd be bored. Not there's a lot of work to do, but like also like, you're just stuck in like on a hill or in a bin or somewhere, and you just discover things. Like it's just this beautiful, important part of life. Was there an important person in your life growing up that influenced what you wanted to be or who you are? That's a big question.
I was just gonna say that. Ooh, that's big.
Sorry. Just dive right in.
Honestly, it was probably somebody in my family because we were very close. Because, when you're on a farm, you don't go out into, like, you'd go to town maybe once a week, but the people that you interact with the most are those same people that are on the farm or the farm next door, which happened to be and grandma, or the farm across the road, which was my Uncle Keith. So those are kind of the people that you interact with the most. And I know for me personally, like my mom was a huge influence. Like she's easily one of my best friends still. So, and I know some people don't have that kind of relationship with their parents. So I feel very fortunate that I am so close with her.
Mm-hmm. Are they still there on the farm?
Mom and dad are still on the farm. Yes. They have some cattle, but that's about it right now. Not as many crops as we used to do. And in Ontario, too, it's smaller farms than out west. So you don't have quite as much land to look after or cattle to look after.
Mm-hmm. How did you get here? How did that happen?
The short version or the longer version?
No, we have time. That's what we're here for, to hear your story. I want the long version.
Okay. So after I graduated university, actually, it was the summer before I graduated. So my first radio job was like the summer cruiser kid. So basically what you did is you worked every weekend in the summer, but you drove out to all these community events and you would call reports back into the radio station. And that was your job. And that was what you did. And it was awesome because I did it for my hometown station in Owen Sound. So I'm like, I know all these places. I know all these events. This is great. So that summer was great. And I was like, yay, now I know some people at the radio station. So after university, I was hired on part-time there, and I worked weekends on the oldies station because there was 3 radio stations that operated out of the same building. So I would do weekends for the oldies station and then a couple nights on the country station. And eventually that grew into me doing evenings on the country station and then middays. And then they had a really solid team at that radio station. And so I was still new in my career, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to move up if I stay at this radio station. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, is like, what else is out there? What else is available? So I started looking around for different jobs, and eventually I applied and got one at a station in Orillia, Ontario. And so it was an afternoon drive show, which was a step up from doing middays, but it was also a larger audience. And so I met, a whole bunch of great people who worked at that station, and I had a really great experience there, but it was short-lived because it was at a time when the economy started to falter. And so like every company was doing layoffs, every one of them. And it basically turned out that because I was the most recent hire, I was the one who was let go. And when they told me, they were like, this has nothing to do with your ability. It has nothing to do with, like, you haven't done anything wrong. This is unfortunately just the position we're in. And so it was like, okay, like, what do I do? And I remember at the time, like, because Aurelia it was a couple hours drive from my parents' farm. So I just went back home because I was like, I don't know what the next step is. And it was a lot of thought, like, do you want to stay in radio? Do you want to get out of radio? Is there something else you're interested in doing? Do you want to move back to the farm and find a job that keeps you on the farm? Like, all these questions. And I had heard some people, like, they'd been laid off and they'd left radio and they hadn't found their way back in. And I thought, well, my career is still starting, so I don't want that to happen to me. I'm scared that if I don't jump to another radio job, then I'm not going to get back into radio. And that's going to be it.
Mm-hmm.
And so someone I had worked with, they had a few years back worked in Lloydminster at what at the time was known as Lloyd FM. And she saw a job posting come up and she called me. She's like, you should apply for this. She's like, I think you'll really like the town. There's really great people that work there. I think you'd be a great fit. You should apply. And I was like, I've never heard of this town. Tell me more. And so she talked to me about Lloydminster and some of the people she'd met and why she liked it. And she said, honestly, just send in your application and see what happens. You'd be a great fit. And so that's what I did. And I went through a series of interviews and they offered me, I believe it was an evening job at the time. And I said yes, because I'm like, yes, it's a radio job. So I packed up my car. Oh, this is the other thing. So I had been driving an old Jeep, which was an old Jeep. And I was like, it's not going to make it on this thousands kilometer drive out west. So I need to get something else. And the only thing I could afford was a teeny tiny little Yaris. So it's like, pack up your life in the back of a Yaris and head out west. And that's where I'm very
That's scary.
thankful.
That's scary. Like, that's brave.
Well, and like I broke down because I was packing and like the time was coming when I was leaving. And I just happened to be leaving on Mother's Day weekend. Like that's just how the timing worked. And I was like, I'm driving how far on my own and it's Mother's Day and I'm going to miss my family and I already know it. And I forget what I couldn't fit in my car. And I just like broke down. Like I started to cry and I was like, how am I going to do this? I'm never going to make it. Like I can't get a spatula. Or, I don't know what it was in my car. Right. And so I just remember being very upset and my mom consoling me. And then I got up the next morning and my dad had packed everything in my car. Like, I don't know how he did it, but all the stuff that I couldn't get in, he had gotten in. And he put in extra things. Like when I finally got out here and started to unpack, I was like, where did this camping chair come from? And also, he packed my skates. And I was like, how did you put my skates in?
How did you predict where I was going?
And like, how did you know I was going to need them? Because it was interesting too, because my dad was the one who was like, oh, just think about it as you're going to go for 6 months. You're going to have a great time. And then you're going to come back and, you know, you'll get a radio job in Ontario. So that really helped me too, because it was the mindset of, you know, I also think it was him saying to me, like, you can come back anytime you want, you know, say this doesn't work out, say it's not what you thought it was going to be, just come home. And so I think
like it's not the end of the world. This is not, it's like a tiny blip in your life.
Yes. Like
although it ended up being the longest blip of your life, but
it did. It did. But I really feel like because I had that support, not just in that moment, but throughout my childhood, that I was like, I can do this. And my mom was even like, do you want me to come with you? Like I can hop a plane and go back. And I was like, no, I got this. I got this.
Oh, wow.
And I did. Yeah.
That's yes, how parents should be supportive, because I'm sure they weren't psyched you were driving by yourself across the country.
I can't imagine them being excited about that.
Yeah.
But, you know, it was, you know, call every day, call a couple times a day. We want to know where you are. We want to know you're okay, that kind of stuff. So.
Did you have a cell phone?
I did, but in Northern Ontario, you don't get much of a signal sometimes. I remember a day where it was in Northern Ontario and I saw maybe 5 vehicles all day. And you'd almost like want to wave at the other vehicle because you're like, I haven't seen a vehicle for 2 hours.
Yeah. No, and that's kind of what Canada is like, especially on that drive through the middle, which no one really counts or remembers.
But I'm glad I did it. And I also made myself stop along the way so I wouldn't miss it. Like I made sure to stop at the Terry Fox Monument because it's like, oh, you know, I need to get out there because I need to get to work. But at the same time, how often do you drive across Canada, right?
No.
So I was like, take these moments because you're going to remember them and they're going to make it more of an adventure. It's less scary when it's an adventure.
Yes, totally. Yeah. When you flip your like thinking and your mindset, and I feel like also doing things as a young woman independently really shapes who you are. And it can give you this, especially like when you're traveling, because that is really so scary. And I feel like you discover things about yourself, and you also what comes along with that is confidence and self-assurance, and that you basically, I did that. Now I surely can do anything.
And you learn to like take care of yourself. And it's not so much that you don't ask others for help, but that you know that, you know, I can do this. I can handle this.
Mhm.
And the other thing that really worked out for me too was I called ahead to find an apartment. And the gentleman I talked to was like, "Oh, yeah, I've had people from that company live in this building. I have a spot for you. Just let me know when you get here. Bring your deposit." And I was like, wow, this is pretty awesome.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like in the broadcasting world, everyone's done a stint in Lloydminster.
Quite a few people have. Yeah. It's
It's
fun now
like
to watch other stations and you're like, hey, I remember when Peter Quinlan was here or whatever, right? Like you
right,
recognize
like
them. Yeah,
and even when they're here, like, doing their stint, you're like, "They're gonna holy shit. I know I'm gonna see them on like some sort of like national station one day because you're just blowing my mind." And
exactly.
like although we're so glad you stayed, but like I feel like it's a rite of passage.
It kind of is. And I know people have asked me in the past, like, why haven't you gone on to a big city? And I just know in my heart, since I came from the farm, like big city life is not for me. And I also know that because when I went to school in Toronto, I got a taste of living in one of the biggest cities in Canada. And that was like my first
That's
night
good
there. I
enough
couldn't
for you.
sleep. I couldn't sleep. I was like, why are all the lights still on? Why are there still cars driving down the street? Like, why is everybody still awake? So, like, that experience was fantastic. But also, I was like, I've lived in the big city. I'm good. I don't
The
need to do it full
noise,
time.
the noise of living in a city, it just like I never slept, I don't
Hmm.
think,
Oh, yeah.
going to university. Yeah, I was just like the I was just like, "What is going on with the world?" Yeah, no one sleeps, that's right, and at night, things should be silent, but I guess that's where you grow up and what you're used to and what is, like, comfortable
Yes.
and for you, and I guess at the end of the day, what feels like home,
Hmm. Definitely.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you
And
built a home here for sure, like through not only like listenership, but the people you work with and those relationships, right? Like, when did you, so like when we talk about people going through and transitioning into someplace else, when did you know that like you wanted to make this permanent and stay? Like, was that a conscious choice or it was just an evolution?
I think it was an evolution. And part of it was my role at the radio station because I started, on evenings and weekends. But the longer I stayed here, the more I moved up. And eventually I was doing mornings. And I was like, this is what I always wanted. I always wanted to do a morning show. And I really like the size of the city. I really like the people. Like, I'm basically living the dream. Like, this is my dream job. So, and I had met so many people too that I'd really become good friends with. And I would even consider some of them to be like family. So I was like, I know wonderful people. I'm doing a job I love. I'm going to stay.
Hmm.
I was very fortunate in that it all kind of worked so well.
Yeah, and it has, and we're lucky to have you, really, which I'm
Well,
so
thank
grateful
you.
for. Yeah, no, we're like, I'm sure, and the community all feels the same way. Like, you do so much, you're at every event, and I feel like someone who sits in gratitude, which it sounds like you kind of do, right?
I
Like,
try to. Yep.
yeah, there's a
I feel
special quality about that. Like,
well, and there's something humbling too about people having their radio on in the kitchen. Like they've invited you into their home every morning. So that is something that's very humbling. It makes you feel it just makes you feel more thoughtful about what you're doing
mhm.
and it makes you feel cared about, right? Like they turned on their radio. Like that's wonderful. So it's an
Like, it's
honor
a
to be,
partnership.
yeah, like it's an honor to be in somebody's home or somebody's car. Like whether you listen for that 20-minute drive to work or you're listening all morning, it really is wonderful to know that people are doing that and that you're making those connections with them. So it's very humbling and I try not to take it for granted because there's other options out there. So for them to choose to listen to me or our station, it feels really good.
Mhm. Do you feel a responsibility with having a platform and a voice and a big listenership?
Definitely. There definitely is a responsibility that goes with that. And it's being thoughtful, it's being respectful, it's trying to do things with kindness. And also for me, it's trying to help out others. Like if Big Brothers Big Sisters says, hey, we have this event coming up, well, great, I'll talk about it. Hopefully more people will hear about it, and that in turn will bring your organization, either more people will be aware of it or more people will go to that event, and it'll be a great success for you. So it does come with a lot of, I really do just want to help, and if something I say on the radio can help, then that's a good day.
I feel like you're doing more than just saying things on the radio. Like you're showing up with your time, right? And you're showing up in the community. You're not just like, oh, go to the Big Brothers thing. You're at the Big Brothers thing.
Okay, that is true. I feel
Yeah.
like part of it too is, well, if I'm saying you should go, well, I'm going to stand behind that and I'm going to go too. Like, it's not just like, hey, go do that, I'm not going to bother. It's no, I believe in it too. And it's because it's our community, and our community is a great community, and I want it to continue to be great and be successful. So when we support each other, that just builds our community and it makes us more successful.
You're so right. And I feel like, there's so many tensions, I guess is the best way to describe our socioeconomical climate right now. Like, people are so upset, and they're so, well, Jen Sincero talks about it in her book. She says, you will spend human beings spend so much time sitting in I'm right and you're wrong. And she said it is the biggest misuse of our time in our lives, is trying to say or prove that you're right. And I'm sure she worded it in like a really badass way. But that's what I took away from that. And I'm sure I don't have a huge listenership or anything comparatively to what you've built after so many years. However, I too feel a responsibility to uplift others. And do, like, there are such beautiful positive things you can do with your words and your voice, and there's power to that. And I feel like what you put out, you receive back in energy, in life, really.
And I also find too that even if you've connected with one person, like, you've done it, right? If you have spoken to one person and they've taken in what you said and it's made a difference, then you've done something great. Yeah. That's how I feel.
I walked off a podcast the other day and I said that to the host. I said, if we make one person think twice about, being kinder about this, then we did something here today. And he got a listener come back and send him this really long message and just saying, like, I didn't know that. I didn't understand it. And now I can see it from another angle, and I'm going to try to be better and more compassionate. And I just think, like, empathy is our greatest superpower as human beings. And it's hard to come off of going through things and trauma. Like, I'm not saying those things are easy, and I'm not saying my troubles are like greater than anyone else's. Everyone has experienced some sort of struggle or trauma, because that is the way that life is. And those are seasons of our life. And I feel like we can either come out in one way or another. And when you do have a platform, it is a dangerous, it can be dangerous.
Definitely. And I try to always be positive too. Because, there are some times when you're just having a bad day, nothing's going right, or you're mad about something in the news. But I try not to bring that on the air because my listener might be having a great day. So I don't want to bring them down, you know?
Yeah.
So I try
I'm down
and
here. Come down here with me.
yeah, exactly. Plus I often feel like, you know, it's easy to find the negative, like it's everywhere around you. So let's focus on the positive and let's bring that out. And let's try and spread that because that is going to do so much more for us in the long run.
It does have power. And I'm not saying like we do have bad days, but that
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
mean we have to go doesn't have to like I just watched this guy on Prime. And I forget his name. He wrote a book. It's like motivational. And he's big into positivity journaling. And he said, it's not like you have to like sit in positivity and gratitude all the time, but if you go at the end of each day, like nothing huge, just 3 things, and you can do it with your kids too, that went well. Not like what's good in my life, like I have a house and I'm on the radio and I'm like loving it, like not that, but like what small thing today went well. So 1, 2, 3, 3 of those things. And if you do it for 30 days straight, it's like proven to get your brain to automatically shift from like focusing on that one negative thing that someone said to you that day into like, wow, we had the best fucking day today because like it actually works. Like it's a proven statistical thing that worked, obviously, because he talks about it around the world. And I actually started to try because I'm so into trying those things. And I already kind of do because I call it I Get To in my own book, but I wanted to try his like what went well. And I did it with my partner and we were laying in bed and I was like, just try this, just like try this out. And he went to the Bobcats game that day and he's like kind of a negative Nelly. So like he was like, it was so busy and we couldn't get any fucking seats. I was like, well, it's like
how did that go
playoffs.
well?
Yeah, like no, I'm like, no, but he was joking. He was joking because I was like, what went well? And he likes to like rain on my parade just for kicks. You know, I'm sure Kurt does that to you as well.
Maybe.
Just like pushes buttons for fun.
Maybe. Yep.
Yeah. So I was like, no, tell me like what went well. Okay, you couldn't get seats, whatever. And so he's like, well, we got those frisbees to throw in the bucket.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right in the middle of the ice. And Finn couldn't get his over the glass, of course, and just keeps hucking it like everywhere. He's like, but Gus like almost got it in the middle and he's telling this funny story. I was like, if we hadn't done this exercise, if we hadn't talked about this, like I would have never heard that you guys even got the frisbees at the Bobcat game. Like I wouldn't have heard this story. And I liked the story and it made us both feel really good talking about it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this shit works.
That's amazing.
Right? We really can choose to shift to not sit in the I feel sorry, fear and anger parts of our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Sometimes it's hard. It's so hard, but if you do the work, you will get there.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's easy. Like sometimes it takes years. And I sat in a place in my life, I didn't elaborate wholeheartedly, I feel like in my book, because I was out of it. I didn't want to sit in it anymore. But just to say, like, I went through this hardship and this struggle and I drank a lot and it was to mask the way I was feeling. So it took that shift and of not choosing not to drink and not sit there anymore and do something. And no one could do that but me, right? Like we can talk about gratitude and how much we love things till we're blue in the face, but it's ultimately everyone's choice and they have to choose to do it. You can't make someone
you can't
shift, right?
No. And sometimes there's just like grief. Sometimes you just have to learn to live with it, you know? When you lose someone who means a lot to you, sometimes you just learn that it's going to be there.
Yeah. Is there someone in your life that you lost? Like,
My grandpa Adair, he was very close to me, and when he passed, it was like I think about him every day, and I it was really hard. And before that, I thought that grief was something that went away. But I've since learned that it doesn't. It just kind of changes. And so now I've learned that there's always going to be this like pain in my heart for him. But I also know that means how much I loved him and how much he cared, not just for me, but for our whole family. And also, I didn't realize this either. I think it was like my counselor who told me this. She's like, just because someone's passed on doesn't mean your relationship with them ends. Like, you obviously still think about him. And like sometimes, I just sit and think about him because it's his birthday or whatever and go over some great memories we had. And it was comforting for me to hear your relationship doesn't have to end. But I'd never thought about that before. And I'd never realized that sometimes grief just becomes a part of you.
Mm-hmm. I feel like they're living through us.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a gift.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Do you have a story about him that you're willing to share?
I was very fortunate in that because he was a veteran of World War II. So one year, group of veterans were going back to Holland. I think it was in honor of it was either the 60th liberation or the 65th. But he asked me to go with him because each veteran could take like somebody to help them out, basically.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I went with him. And that experience changed my understanding of World War II, but it also changed my relationship with my grandpa in a great way. And before we left, he went to the Legion in Owen Sound and he got all these poppies and he was going to hand them out. And like his suitcase was full of them. He asked me to put some in mine. And I was like, we're never going to hand out all these poppies. Like, but I was like, okay, if that's what you want to do, sure. Sounds great. We'll do it. And so we had to go to a few events. And I think it was by day 2, he'd already handed them all out to people in Holland and explained what they were. And you saw people wearing them. And I was like, how was I so wrong that we weren't going to go through all these? You know what I mean? But when he first did it, I was like, what is he doing? And then as I watched him do it, I was like, this is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Just one of those people that has like that magnitude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he was around quite a bit when we were growing up as kids. So we used to go for rides with him on the tractor or help him in the garden or whatever. And when I first moved out to Lloydminster, he and my grandma were actually living in British Columbia. So every now and then they'd just drive over and say hi, which was awesome. So, yeah.
I know.
But
I
yeah.
feel like people can discount the fact that like they're the reason we're all here, and and what they went through in their lives. Like those are real stories and real struggles. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I was always so fortunate because a lot of veterans didn't really want to talk about what happened, but I was fortunate in that grandpa would talk about it. And so I took him into a studio one day and we talked about it for like 2 hours and I put together this short radio piece on it. And it was a great gift for me because now I have his voice forever because it's recorded. So I can always listen to it. But I also know how hard it was for him to talk about some of those things. And so for him to be willing to do that was a great gift because some people don't want to talk about it. And I also found that when we were in Holland, he said to me, like, some of these guys, they're still living it. They live it every day. They haven't gotten past it. And so I feel very fortunate that he didn't live it every day, but he was willing to go back to it, to talk about it because it was so bad that he didn't want it to happen again. And so I just felt very fortunate that he shared that. and that he was my grandpa. Like I call him my hero all the time because he was willing to sacrifice everything. So
yeah, there's so much value in their stories, and so much we can learn as people and take away, and just thinking about like the time that they were in is also very fascinating. Like we had to have a horse and cart to go to the dance, and you're just like, and like there was only like not a ton of dances every year, and like I only had 3 men to pick, and one of them had to be my husband.
Yeah.
You're like, what?
I feel the exact same way. Yeah.
I remember my grandma, I was driving home from Wilkie. I was bringing her home from Wilkie. It was the winter where there was no snow in December. That's all I remember. It was driving home from Wilkie, Saskatchewan, and there was no snow on the wheat fields. And I was like, WTF is going on? And so anyway, that's one, is just like sticks in my memory. Me driving in my mom's Toyota RAV4, which we call a Rava as a joke because these old people thought the 4 was an A. So we were driving in the Rava, and she was telling me the story. She's like, well, your grandpa, he wanted to marry my sister, but she was already getting married, so he settled on me. I was just like, oh my god,
What?
this is the worst. The worst. Best story. I'm so glad you had 13 children with him, and you guys kind of liked each other, but that's like the way it worked, right? And not that it worked out well or anything, it's just the way it was. And so there's gratitude right there. Someone didn't settle on you, and you have a choice now.
It's like, funny you say that story, because whenever we would ask Grandpa how he met Grandma, he'd always be like, oh, I was just walking along one day. She tripped me. I fell in love with her. That was it. So I don't think I know how they actually met.
You don't know the real story. He had a joke story for you, like a dad joke story.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Could have been arranged. Who knows? You never, like, Tina spoke, well, you were there at the Inspiring Women's Conference, and I have spoken to her and Spiro because I worked with them for a long time in their restaurant. And I think that was like my longest standing job, if we're counting being an artist. Yeah, I think I had my longest standing career at Spiro's. So her marriage, she talked about, was arranged, and how like she didn't like this guy for a long time and came all the way to Canada to be married to him. And like now, of course, they fell deeply in love, and it's a different kind of way. But like, I just find these stories so fascinating because there is always something to take away and always something neat to see, and like how life is so much different, and the opportunity, like sitting in the opportunity we have now.
And it's fascinating to me too, how like, because my grandpa ended up working for GM, so helping to make cars. And it's like back then, well, that's your career. That's all you do. But nowadays, people, well, work here a couple years, then maybe I'll move on over here. Like people transition their careers so much easier than they used to. You used to get a job or you worked on the farm or whatever, and that was it. But now you can do whatever you want,
Which is almost harder, maybe. No, it's great. I love it because I have like 7 different jobs that I choose to do all at once. And no, that wasn't possible even a decade ago. So to podcast from home, it was, but not many were doing it. Now we can order something and it'll be here the next day. Yeah.
Well, and you should have seen the equipment you probably needed back then to do it from home.
Well, I minored in film in school. So like I'm not that much younger than you, I don't think. I think we're close to the same age. And we were still editing like I learned to edit and cut real film. Like that's where,
You got skills.
we're sitting.
You have skills.
I loved it. I loved film. I loved videography and learning all of that, like in sound editing. I think the thing is, it's super time consuming.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
ridiculously time consuming, and I could never just like sit and I already do. I sit and edit a lot, but I couldn't do it all the time. Anyway, uh I want to hear. So this question is sponsored by Red Bicycle Communications, a beautiful business, female-owned business in our community, and it's called A Day in the Life. And so I want you, Heather, to describe your ideal, perfect day.
Oh,
It can be anywhere. You can be doing anything, whatever it is. I know you just went on a dream vacation.
that's a tough one. Partly because some of the things I really enjoy are in different seasons. Like, for example, I
Right.
love being in the garden, but I love skating.
Let's hop around seasons in your perfect, ideal, imaginary day.
In my perfect day, I think I would still be on the radio, but I would find a way to like do a show from maybe it's going to Bud Miller Park and talking to people from our community, like giving them a chance to be a part of that day, because there's so many great people here that it would be nice to spend some time with them. And I guess I mean that in the sense, like, you see somebody at the grocery store and you're like, oh, we don't have time to chat, but you find a way to make the time for them during that day, during that perfect day. And I do love being on the air, so it'd be great to do like a short show and then like fly my whole family out here so we could go skating or whatever. And I think it would end with really good food and a campfire with s'mores. And if Keith Urban could show up and sing a song, that would just be like the cherry on top.
Yes, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. You've met Keith Urban, right?
I have, yes. I've been very fortunate. I've met him more than once. I don't want to rub it in, but
Your besties?
I wouldn't go quite that far, but yeah, we know each other.
Yeah. That's so great. I got to meet, or I had Jan Arden on my podcast the other day, which you'll come after, so everyone will know already, so it's not a secret.
Okay.
You have to think about that. I'm actually getting very I have probably 50 podcasts to release, so I'm just what do you talk about and when and when's the timeline and things being released? And I'm this
Can
is
I
getting
say this
so
now or not?
confusing. Yeah, it's getting very confusing. But it's neat talking to your heroes and people you admire, because you're they're just another person out in the world having the same fears and doubts and accomplishments and things that we're all going through on a daily basis. It kind of strips it all away. And when we talk about when I talk about my mom and you talk about your grandpa or something, Jan does this impression of her own mom all the time, and she recently lost her mom, and she kind of brings her back through an impression. She does it in her most recent book too, and it's just it is such a gift, because every time she does an impression of her mom, it's like a life lesson that her mom said. And it's just so cool. And I feel like they are still here living through us and teaching us that we have the power to make the world even better, more positive place. We have the choice to do that. And I see you living it every day. I hear it in your answers, and I'm so grateful that you came on and that you're a part of our community, and I get to know you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And I should say I'm also very grateful that I do still have one grandparent, my grandma Dare, and she's awesome. She's just an awesome lady, and I'm so thankful. She's one of my heroes too, because she's so strong.
Mm-hmm. They, yeah, I honestly, when if anyone's gone through a war, I'm just like, our pandemic looks like a war for sissies. Like it was like nothing, right? Like
It's like a
we
blip.
had to stay, we had to stay home and be together. I mean, not saying I'm not taking anything away. I know people had
No,
losses and
no.
hardships and but in our personal experience, we got to stay home. So
Mhm.
it actually was very nice in
Mhm.
a way. And I know people are still suffering mentally, and I don't want to take, or I want to acknowledge that
Yeah, for sure.
however,
Yeah.
but like when you compare it to a world war, where like in that case my husband would have had to leave,
Mhm.
and then if it continued to go on, one of or two of my sons, like that is holy shit, never want that to happen ever
Yeah.
again,
Yeah,
sort
it's
of deal.
frightening for sure. Yeah, for sure. Mhm.
Okay, so then I did touched on that right before we left. Great. Just no, thank you, Heather, for being here. And where can everyone find you? Are you a big I don't think you are big into social, like mostly you're just a radio celebrity.
Yes, yes, mostly I'm just on the radio, and I do have a Facebook page. You could find me there.
Okay. All right. Heather Klages on Facebook. Great. And I will include everything in the intro and well, maybe, I don't know. It's hard to predict these days. By the way, Kurt takes advantage when I'm on live. He's like, Brandy loves to tell the truth, and I feel like he stretches it so far because he's like,
Not
for
Kurt.
sure,
He wouldn't do that.
for sure, she'll like swear or say vagina at some point in our conversation if I just keep asking this woman questions.
I can't believe he would do that. What?
No, pure entertainment gold. Anyway, I don't know. No, he's so great to talk to. And I'm so glad I did talk to him because I wouldn't be talking to you because in one of our, like, I always stay and talk for like an hour longer after the show, which it just goes to show how great you both are as people. But talking to him the one day is the reason why I sparked the idea of you coming on. So I'm really grateful for that. All right, I'll let you go. I have another meeting. Wednesdays are my day.
Yay!
I'm grateful for my dad's here, so Grandpa's here because I truly too do believe in uh, the kids. It's important
Mhm,
for kids to spend time with their grandparents, if they can.
definitely.
If
Yeah.
they can. If you would have told me 10 years ago, my kids, I would have left them alone with my dad. I'd been like, I think so. But he has come. He's like such a trooper, and he's been so great. So I'm super, 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 super happy. So
He
I've
is
said super a lot.
awesome. Say
Yeah, oh
hi to him
right.
for
You
me.
know my
Haven't
dad.
seen him
Yeah.
for a while.
No, he's in retirement, and he's
And he's liking retirement?
yeah, he of
Yeah,
course got another job because he's
of
not
course.
one of those people that can sit still ever. I'm like, you don't have to have a job, right? Like, you know that. But he like loves moving, but it also gives him time to we get to spend time together, and he does
Hmm.
have a cool place where there's a good plot of land where we can just hang out. And well, the dugout was dried up for a couple years, and literally like the kids spent hours just playing in the dugout mud. So just like going in and
Loving
out
every
and
second
throwing
of it too,
hucking
I bet.
sticks in the wet parts, like
Oh, yeah.
so much entertainment in doing nothing. And it's a pretty cool life we've got going on. So okay, I'll let you go, and I hope you have the best day, and we'll
You
chat with
too?
you soon. I'll see you at the next event.
Sounds good.
Okay. Bye, Heather.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it so much. I appreciate it, you being here. And if you feel like you have a friend or loved one who needs like a pick-me-up or needs a podcast that just, if you're loving it, share it. Because just it feels good to share love, and if you want to support us, that is the best way to do so. you can just share in a story on social media, or you can talk about us to someone, because our intentions are good, and we want our visions and this outlook on life to affect as many people as possible, because I truly believe that everyone has the ability to see their everyday ordinary as extraordinary. And it's just a matter of mindset shift and self-care and self-love. And I so want it for as many people as possible. So if you're feeling gratitude and love for this podcast and the energy we put forth into bringing it to you, feel free to share. We will appreciate it so much. And also just feel free to reach out and chat anytime. I'm really good on Instagram at responding, at Brandy Hofer Studios, and or Color Me Happy Community on Instagram as well. Check it out. And speaking of, we have some upcoming new supporters of the podcast, which is really cool, but it's not officially official. So one day soon I'll get to announce it. I'm excited. And they are supporting everything about what we do, which is really, really special. Be sure to check out brandyhofer.ca. Have an amazing long weekend. I can't believe I'm recording this and then putting it out so last minute. But again, I told you I loved yard work, and I have been not only doing my own yard work, I'm taking on my dad's. And he's got an acreage. So let me just put it out there I made some big piles of bonfire piles, but there's a fire ban, so I just have these piles of stuff. But it feels good. I feel strong. Fresh air is the best. Getting outside feels so good, especially for us here in Canada, which all my American friends make fun of my accent, which I don't think I have. So I guess that's just how accents work. I don't think we sound like... I've totally got off topic. I don't think I sound we don't sound like the doing a and all that stuff. I'm doing the worst impression of a Canadian, or I already just sound like a Canadian and don't know it. I don't know it. That was closer. Over here in Canada, playing the hockey. And that's what everyone thinks I never say a, probably not really ever. All right. Thank you to our ongoing amazing supporters: Red Bicycle Communications, Oasis Hot Yoga and Spin Studio, and Nouveau Laser and Aesthetic Center. I am currently obsessed with, and you can check this out and go talk to them about it. They just have it in their little section. It's color science, and it's sunscreen, and it matches the color of your face. There's only 3 bottles, so it has this amazing, it's called Color B technology or something, and it matches the color of your face. So I have a ton of acne scars from motherhood and hormone shifts, and so I actually don't even wear makeup. I just use the color science sunscreen, and it evens out my skin tone with the age spots and scars and stuff. So check that out. It's my fave. I love talking about it. I'm not paid by Color Science or anything. I just genuinely love that product, and I really love our supporters, Nouveau. They give back and are out in the community so much. Same with Oasis and same with Red Bicycle. I love these partnerships and these people who support what we're doing here. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful time wherever you are this weekend. If you're staycationing, if you're working in your yard, if you're working at your job, and if you're out at the lake, good for you. That will be that would be fun too. Okay, I'm just gonna go because I clearly can never say goodbye.
If you're looking for some time for yourself to relax, release, and unwind, Oasis has the perfect space for you. They offer yoga and spin classes of all levels. Whether you are a beginner or advanced student, Oasis thrives on accommodating all aspects of the practice. Let their serene environment and gracious staff help you in your journey of peace, healing, and strength. Sign up online at www.oasishotyogastudio.com or by downloading the Oasis Hot Yoga Studio app. Feel like yourself. You deserve it.